Hello, everyone. We are going to go through primarily the Book of Obadiah on our quest through the major and minor prophets. I did find the Isaiah videos and I put them in a playlist. I actually have gotten through chapter 40 in the Book of Isaiah, but I did it in 2021. So I have not watched these videos in forever. I know that I will have done a significant amount of research as I was going through them, but I couldn't tell you what I said in any specific one of the videos because they were 4 years ago. But I do have a playlist out there for Isaiah, which goes from chapters 1 through 40. And you will see that my channel used to be significantly smaller because it is rare in those videos as I was going through them and finding them and adding them to the playlist that any of the videos got even 100 views. It's very interesting to see the journey that my channel has taken. But as we go through our quest, hitting some of these major and minor prophets that I have not already addressed, I want to take some time and isolate some of the minor prophets that don't get so much attention. And one of my favorites is the Book of Obadiah. The reason it's one of my favorites, Joel is my favorite. Joel is my favorite, and I will go through that. I actually included it in one of my books, a whole written expositional study in one of my books of the Book of Joel, because it was pertinent to what I was writing about, or I made it pertinent, one of the two. Like it didn't have to be, but I thought, well, we're here anyway, so let's just talk about it. But one of my other favorites is the Book of Obadiah. And the reason it's one of my favorites is because it adds so much clarity about Psalm 83, which is something that a lot of people have a lot of uncertainty about. There are such varying opinions about what's intended. Is it a war? Is it not a war? Is it a prayer? When does it happen? Did it already happen? Like there's so many different viewpoints that people take about it. And so, one of the biggest things I like to do is try to add clarity where there is confusion. Where is Obadiah? Obadiah. There it is. It's like a tiny little one chapter book with 21 verses. I'm like, where are you? So, Obadiah, part of the reason I don't even remember what I was saying about Psalm 83. There are so many people who have varying different opinions about varying different facets of this. And so I actually did write a book back in 2017. I won't go down that rabbit trail. I was going to say after. Yeah, whatever. I don't want to bring anybody else into the conversation. I did write a book. It was my third one in 2017 called Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17, where I did full expositional studies of both of those chapters because people have been talking about these things for years and years and years and years and years. It was 8 years ago. People are still thinking that it's relevant, and it's not. And so they're still looking at these things to tell them that the rapture's close. It's usually what it is. It's usually pre-tribbers who are talking about Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17, trying to making them meaningful or relevant to our time as signs on the road to the rapture. I once upon a time listened to this one pastor or evangelist or whatever, this is years and years and years ago, say the road to the rapture is paved with Damascus. And I'm like, no, buddy, it's not. No, it's not. But you'll hear a lot of similar things out of people's mouths trying to say that we need to see this or we will see this before the rapture to know that the rapture's close. Well, no, we don't actually. And so I sat down and I wrote expositional studies, line by line, word by word, verse by verse, and took you through and told you where sister passages, where relevant passages are to establish context. And for a lot of these, there are multiple places. So that makes it easier to establish context. Incidentally, I got asked who the hidden ones are in Psalm 83. It's a reference to the remnant. I have talked about this in Zephaniah 2. They're also mentioned, and in Isaiah 26, they're also mentioned. It's a reference to the remnant, the ones that will be hidden in the day of the Lord's fierce anger. Hidden because they come to Christ, and so they don't get judged. They're hidden in Christ so that the wrath of God does not affect them negatively. It's not a physical hiding, it's a spiritual hiding. And Zephaniah 2 is probably the clearest on that. So I've gone through that a whole bunch. The hidden ones from Psalm 83 is a reference to the remnant. That should tell you that this is not for our time, because the remnant is not for our time. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. This is Psalm 83:1. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, have consulted against thy hidden ones. That's two different ways of saying the exact same thing. To take crafty counsel against thy people, which is Israel, consulted against thy hidden ones. That is who will be the remnant. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And this is going to tie into the book of Obadiah. Where did Joel come from? This is going to tie into the book of Obadiah, because this is specifically what Edom is accused of doing, and part of why they are on the receiving end of God's wrath is because they attempt to thwart the flight of the remnant, and they attempt to cause further harm to Jacob in their day of distress. Well, Edom is Esau. The Mount Seir is the Mount of Esau. So this is an ancient brother versus brother. Notice that Ezekiel 38 and 39 talk about geographic land areas. Psalm 83 talks about people. These are names in large part, not all of them. But this is going to be specifically related to, Psalm 83 is specifically related to what's going to happen to Israel at a point in the future, and how God is going to send the whirlwind of fire to take care of them at the second coming, because they are doing this. They are his enemies that try to get at Israel because they cannot get at him. Well, he's going to return, and when he does, he's going to clean up shop and open a can on them. Why? They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. That is a reference to the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week. This is clearly referenced by Jesus himself, not in exactly the same words, but it's clearly referenced by Jesus himself in Matthew 24, when it talks about the flight of the remnant. Jesus says, when ye shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, sorry, my cat's over there being weird. When ye shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet seen in the holy place, let whosoever flee. Let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, to them that give suck in those days. Pray ye that your flight not be in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be tribulation such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor shall ever be. I hope you guys all know these verses, which is why I'm speeding through them. And except those days should be shortened by their flight out of Jerusalem, there should no flesh be saved. So there's two choices, flee or die. And except those days should be shortened by their flight out, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, the hidden ones, those days shall be shortened, because there's a command to flee and an event tied to that command so that they flee. And then Michael, the great prince of Israel, will stand up, and he's the wings of the great eagle that take Israel into their place, where they'll be nourished for a time, times half a time. That is what these verses in Psalm 83 are about. Verses 3 and 4 is the flight of the remnant. Why? They have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom. Edom is Esau. Ishmaelites, Ishmael. Moab, that's Moab and Ammon were the children of Lot. Hagarenes from Hagar. I don't know who Gabal is. I knew when I wrote my Psalm 83 book, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Ammon, one of Lot's children. Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher. So the Philistines and the inhabitants of Tyre are the only, well, those are people. The inhabitants of Tyre are people. And Asher. These are all names. These are all names. They're not geographical land areas, although, yes, you can look at Ammon and say this was the geographical land area given to the people of Ammon. But Ammon was a person. We're talking about like Persia, Cush might have been, Libya, Ethiopia, Gomer and Togarmah. Those might have been people, I don't think so, maybe. But those are more specifically land areas in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Those are more land areas in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Psalm 83 is people, These are people that have ancient hatreds. Brother versus brother, cousin versus cousin. They're usually the result of unions that should not have existed that did and bore children who hate Israel. And God is going to deal with them in finality when he returns at the second coming. So the first people group, I went through all of these when I wrote my book and tied them all together. But the very first group listed is the tabernacles of Edom. Well, that's modern day Jordan. It's also tied to Bozra. Bozra was the capital of ancient Edom. Bozra is where the remnant is going to be. Bozra is mentioned twice. Micah. Where's Micah? Can I find you, Micah? Jonah, Micah. Micah 2. I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of thee. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together as the sheep of Bozra. Bozra means sheepfold. As a flock in the midst of their fold, they shall make great noise by reason of the multitude of men. Yeah, because there's going to be a bunch trying to get at them while they're in Bozra, but they will not be able to be gotten to because Michael. The breaker is come up before them. They have broken up. They have passed through the gate. They are gone out of it, and their king shall pass before them, the Lord on the head of them. So Jesus is going to lead the remnant from Bozra, the sheepfold, where they're going to be. And Isaiah 63, who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Bozra? The winepress is going to be trodden from Bozra to the Kidron Valley, where Jesus is going to sit and judge all the heathen round about. So Edom is central. Bozra is central to the second coming of Jesus Christ, to the second half of the 70th week, and specifically to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So on the surface, we should be able to identify with Edom alone and its importance to the second half of the 70th week by virtue of Bozra, if nothing else, that clearly Psalm 83 cannot be for our time. However, the book of Obadiah is about the destruction of Edom. It is a one-chapter book, again, with 21 verses. And so I like reading through this and understanding some of the facets of this because it makes it very, very clear that Psalm 83 is going to be relegated to a very specific time, a very specific event. No, it's not a battle. It's Jesus cleaning up shop on his enemies, and it specifically lists who those are. And then when you go back through it, many of them are, like I said, unions that occurred that bred children that shouldn't have existed, and those children are perpetual enemies of Israel on behalf of God. So Edom, we're going to focus on Edom. Again, this is the book of Obadiah. So here is what my Bible says about this book. A struggle that began in the womb between twin brothers Esau and Jacob eventuates in a struggle between their respective descendants, the Edomites and the Israelites. For the Edomites' stubborn refusal to aid Israel first during their time in the wilderness, wandering, and that's in Numbers 20, and later during a time of invasion, they are roundly condemned by Obadiah. This little-known prophet describes their crimes, tries their case, and pronounces their judgment. Total destruction. Okay, so having said that, let's go to Obadiah, and let's talk about some of this stuff. Part of the reason I also wanted to do this video is not only to clear up the Psalm 83 thing, but to also help people understand when the land of Israel is going to be divided. There are a lot of people who think that the covenant of Daniel 9:27 is some kind of a peace agreement, a division of the land, like a two-state solution or something like that. There is referenced in the Bible that the land will be divided, but it has nothing to do with the Daniel 9:27 covenant, specifically not the beginning of the 70th week. It has to do with the beast and the midpoint. And so I'm going to show you those verses, and I'm going to show you that on account of the actions that occur at the midpoint is why there's going to be judgment at the end of the 70th week. Joel is going to tell us about that. I can't talk. Words are hard, man. Anyway, Obadiah 1:1. The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. The pride in thine heart hath deceived thee, that thou dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high. that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Well, Jesus, actually. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. Yes, he will. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? It's interesting because grape harvest is tied to the harvest at the end of the world, where the reapers are the angels. That's the wheat and the tares. That's the separation of the righteous and the wicked. The righteous go into the kingdom and the unrighteous get kicked out of the kingdom. But there's also another harvest that's specifically about the grape harvest. So you have the barley, which related to Christ, being the first fruits of the barley. You have the harvest at the end of the world, which is the wheat harvest, wheat and the tares, separation of that. That's Matthew 13. But then you also have a reference to the grape harvest, which is wicked Gentiles. The fullness of the Gentiles, and we'll talk about this maybe if I remember, in Joel 3. That is where the fullness of the Gentiles occurs. It's the wicked Gentiles filled to capacity and stomped in the winepress. This is the treading of the winepress. So the fullness is the fats overflowing, for wickedness is great, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. Beat your plowshares into swords, your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves round about, thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. Fullness of the Gentiles. Why do we say Gentiles? Because this was to be proclaimed among the Gentiles in verse 9. Proclaim me this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all of the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, your pruning hooks into spears. So he says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe, come get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for the wickedness is great. Multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, the stars shall withdraw their shining, the Lord also shall roar out of Zion. Utter his voice from Jerusalem, the heavens and the earth shall shake, but the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. So that's what Joel 3 says about judgment in the valley of decision, that it's going to be the fullness of the Gentiles. It's Gentile judgment related to the treading of the grape harvest. The treading of the winepress in the grape harvest. So it's interesting that there's actually a reference to grape gatherers and leaving some grapes. Because as we know about harvests, you have typically when you're talking about the wheat harvest, and this only applies to the wheat harvest, not to the barley or to the grapes. There's first fruits, and there's the main harvest, and then there's the gleanings. So what you have here is a reference to the main harvest. If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? Well, the leaving of grapes after the main harvest is the gleanings. And that's actually mentioned in Isaiah 17. This is why I chuckle when people say things that are understandable that they might not be completely accurate because of typology and what we know about the end times being compared to the grape harvest and the treading of the winepress. And what we know about harvests is there's specifically different types of the harvest. So the main harvest is going to be the stomping of the grapes, wicked Gentiles. But in Isaiah, it says, in Isaiah 17, it talks about the gleaning grapes, which are going to be like the remnant of righteous non-Jew people, Gentiles left to go into the kingdom. It's not just going to be Israel only. Isaiah 17, it shall be when the harvestman gathereth the corn and reapeth the ears with his arm, it shall be as he that gathereth ears in the valley of Rephaim. Yet gleaning grapes shall be left in it, as the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uttermost bough, 4 or 5 in the outmost fruitful branches thereof, saith the Lord God. At that day shall a man look to his maker, and his eyes shall have respect to the Holy One of Israel. Yeah, because they're going to see him, and all eyes, everyone who pierced him, and all the kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. So it's interesting that when you're talking about Psalm 83 and its relationship to timing and things like that, you've got Edom, which talks about the grape gatherers and the leaving of some grapes, which would refer to the gleaning grapes, and you tie that to Isaiah 17, which plainly in the direct text speaks of gleaning grapes left, which talks about not every Gentile being stomped in the winepress. There will be some that will be righteous to go into the kingdom. But it's just interesting when you're talking about judgment, because gleaning grapes is talking about salvation. The main grape harvest, the treading of the winepress, the stomping of the grapes, talks about judgment. And that's what the inference here in Obadiah 1 or Obadiah is. If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? How are the things of Esau searched out? How is his hidden things sought up? How are his hidden things sought up? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. Psalm 83. Verse 5, for they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. So Obadiah is talking about the Confederacy. That includes Edom. Interesting word choice to be used in both chapters because the tabernacles of Edom are mentioned in Psalm 83. So all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and have prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. So even though they were confederate, they still weren't on the same side. It's like every man out for himself at that point. Verse 8, shall I not in that day, saith the Lord, even destroy the wise men out of Edom, and understanding out of the mount of Esau? Talking about the second coming. And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. Tread in the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. Yes. Every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. None righteous. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob shall shame cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. Well, this actually originates all the way back in Genesis with the story between Esau and Jacob. And this goes back to... Romans. Paul says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. This goes back to the selling of the birthright for stew. Yes, there was deception with Isaac bestowing the birthright on Jacob. Rachel had some deception. Nope, not Rachel. Let me see what chapter this is in so I can read the story. Genesis 25. Why not read the story? Oh. Sorry, I'm going off script here. I hadn't planned on doing this, so I'm like, where am I? What am I doing? I don't know. We'll find out together. Okay. Rebecca, not Rachel. I'm like, it's on our name. Rebecca. All right, so verse 25. Or chapter 25. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebecca to wife. She conceived, the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. The one people shall be stronger than the other people. The elder shall serve the younger. So she delivered. Esau came out first. He was red, hairy like a garment. And after that came his brother out. His hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. I'll just read this. The boys grew. Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob sod pottage, and Esau came from the field. He was faint. Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that some red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me this day thy birthright." And Esau said, "Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me this day." He sware unto him. He sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way, and thus Esau despised his birthright. When Paul in Romans 9 talks about, or as it is written, "Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated," it's because Esau despised his birthright. The importance of understanding that is that the birthright was related to the Abrahamic covenant, and the Abrahamic covenant had 3 covenant promises: the land of Israel, the natural seed of Israel, and the promised spiritual seed of Israel. So when Esau despised his birthright, he was despising Christ, who was a promise given to Abraham, who would have come to Isaac and to Esau through the normal lineage, but it was not to be so. It was not to be so. Esau despising his birthright means despising Christ. So Christ is going to despise him and destroy his remnant from off of the earth. That's where that comes from. So obviously the things that pursued or came pursuant to the pottage and everything with the birthright and the bestowing of the birthright and things like that, through the deception, there came a lot of enmity between the brothers. That's described in later chapters after chapter 25 of Genesis. But so you can go check that out. But it's important to understand that Esau despised his birthright, and the birthright specifically and explicitly included Jesus Christ. So in Obadiah 9, it says, "Thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever." So what is the violence against his brother that he's going to be cut off forever? This is not a reference to what happened back when. This is a reference what's going to happen prophetically in the midst of the 70th week. Verse 11, "In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou wast one of them." So this, my Bible is actually footnoting back to Psalm 83, but this goes to Daniel 11. So in the time of Jacob's trouble, in the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou wast one of them. Daniel 11 is one of the chapters of Daniel, and there are multiple, that take you through the progression of kingdoms. It starts with Medo-Persia, takes you into Greece, and then it takes you into the 4th and final empire tied to Revelation 13 with the beast and the 10 kings. The beast and the 10 kings is from verse 36 of Daniel 11 through the end of the chapter. It, right before that, has a link to Antiochus Epiphanes, who was a foreshadow of the last beast. There was also an abomination of desolation there, and stuff like that. So the Antiochus Epiphanes part was a foreshadow of what will be the last. But when you're talking about the progression of the kingdoms, which come from the statue and which come from the beast in the night vision, you're talking about Daniel 11:36, beginning relationship to the 4th of those kingdoms, the 4th of those beasts, which is what's tied to Revelation. Daniel 11:36 is the abomination of desolation that will occur in the midst of the week, as Daniel 9:27 says. Says, "In the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate." There are several places. Daniel 7 talks about it. Daniel 8 talks about it. Daniel 9 tells you when that will occur, and Daniel 11 talks about it as well. Specifically, Daniel 11:36 tells you what it's going to look like. And Paul picks up on this language in 2 Thessalonians 2:4. "Then shall that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." That's the abomination of desolation. Same as Daniel describes it in Daniel 11:36. And the same as John describes it in Revelation 13:5. "The king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. be given power to continue 42 months, for that is determined shall be done. So when you're talking about in the day that these people come to take Jerusalem, carry away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was one of them. Edom is going to be among the people who try to stop Jacob from fleeing and who take spoils of things that don't belong to them. So there's a couple more verses in Daniel 11 that are descriptive of who this beast will be and what he will do. But in verse 39, this is the dividing of the land that Obadiah is talking about, that Edom is going to be part of. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, talking about the beast, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. He shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. He shall cause them to rule over many. In that day the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou wast one of them. In verse 40, at the time of the end, continuing on in Daniel talking about the beast in the second half of the 70th week, shall the king of the south push at him. The king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, with horsemen, with many ships. He shall overflow into the country, shall overflow and pass through. He shall enter also into the glorious land, Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand. Who's the beast not going to be able to conquer during his rampage when he's given power to continue 42 months? Edom, but these shall escape out of his hand. Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Why? Because Jesus' fingers are going to be all over that himself. The beast is not going to get the pleasure of taking care of those. Jesus is going to do it himself. The beast, he shall stretch forth his hand upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. He shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. And he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. Yeah, because Jesus is going to do that too. So, interestingly enough, we have a couple of different references in Obadiah to Psalm 83 and to Daniel. There's a midpoint event, which is the abomination of desolation, and then after that, he shall cause them to rule over many and shall divide the land for gain. Edom is going to be one of the people who participates in that. But when the beast is off conquering, trying to take people to dominate, I guess, he's going to be given power to continue 42 months. It was given to him to make war with the saints to overcome them, and then power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So Daniel 11:40 through the end of the chapter, like 45, tells you what he's going to be doing when he's given that power to continue, and power given over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. However, Edom, Moab, and Ammon are going to escape out of his hand. Not because they're not deserving, but because there's a prophecy in Numbers 24 that explains that. Said prophecy is verse 15 and after, Numbers 24. He took up his parable and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said. He has said, which heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, capital S star, talking about Jesus, and a scepter, capital S scepter, Jesus, shall come out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. And Edom shall be a possession, and Seir shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. So the reason that Edom, Moab, and Ammon escape out of the hand of the beast is because there's a prophecy that Jesus is going to destroy them himself. And why? Because they are going to be responsible for trying to thwart the flight of the remnant and spoiling the land of Israel, dividing it for gain. which is a midpoint of the 70th week thing. So, continuing in Obadiah. In that day that thou stoodest on the other side, and the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou wast one of them. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother, in the day that he became a stranger, means kicked out of his land. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of distress. Thou shouldest not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, thou shouldest not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither shouldest thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. So Edom is going to be terrible to Israel in the midpoint of the 70th week. They're going to try to thwart the flight of the remnant, and they're going to spoil the land of Israel. And Jesus is going to deal with them himself. Verse 15, for the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. For as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance. Yes, of Israel. This is Joel. So we're going to end with the book of Joel. I just have to find it real quick. Upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. Yes, Joel 2:32. It shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. This is talking about physical deliverance, not spiritual, but physical. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord has said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. So the remnant is all over this. The midpoint of the 70th week activities are all over this. In its midpoint, because that's when the activities happen, and then second coming, because that's when Jesus comes to deal with it. And that's actually what you see in the next verse in Joel, which is chapter 3, verse 1. For behold, in those days and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, bring the captives back, I will also gather all nations, and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. That takes you to the events at the midpoint from Daniel 11:39. And Edom is going to be absolutely involved in that. And Jesus is going to whip their butts. To the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. So again, verse 17, but upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, yes, by Jesus himself, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. Because the people who scattered them, who tried to take it away from them, who forced Israel away by the abomination of desolation, if they stayed behind, they would die, is basically what it says. Again, Matthew 24, except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, the remnant, those days shall be shortened by their flight out. Michael gets them out of there and takes them to safety. So you're talking about events that are specifically tied to the midpoint and how they negatively impact Israel and who's involved. And then the end of the 70th week, when the judgment comes for the activities from the midpoint. And salvation, physical deliverance, comes to Israel. Verse 18 in Obadiah, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. They shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord hath spoken it. And they of the south shall possess the mount of Esau, and they of the plain the Philistines, and they shall possess the fields of Ephraim, and the fields of Samaria, and Benjamin shall possess Gilead. And the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites, even unto Zarephath, and the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad, shall possess the cities of the south. And saviors shall come up on Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. Yes, it shall be, which is also a reference to the second coming. I want to talk about one more thing, I think. Yes, I will end with this. And this is a relationship to Jesus judging Edom at the second coming when he returns. Isaiah 34. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them, he hath delivered them to the slaughter. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountain shall be melted with their blood. And all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heaven shall be rolled together as a scroll. It's talking about the second coming. Hebrews 1 talks about that. The Psalms do also. That at the end of days, the heavens will roll together as a scroll, and the Lord will... Thou, O Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thy hands. They shall perish, but thou remainest. They shall wax old as doth a garment, and as a vesture shalt thou fold them up, and they shall be changed. The heavens shall roll together as a scroll, and this is tied to, it's also tied to Seal 6, which is a progressive affectation, progressive affectation of wrath upon the specific heavens and earth. That's what Seal 6 is it's a worsening progression of judgments affecting the specific heavens and earth. Anyway, it's in Revelation 6. Check that out if you want to. But all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, all the heaven shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their host shall fall down, as a leaf falleth off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. This is literally Revelation 6, 12 through 14, Seal 6. End of the earth. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, which is Edom, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord hath a sacrifice in Bozra, and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. It's the treading of the winepress. Again, from Bozra to the Kidron Valley where he sits to judge. The valley of decision, the valley of judgment, the valley of Jehoshaphat from Joel 3 is the Kidron Valley. So that's the end of the treading of the winepress. The unicorn shall come down with them, the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. I realize that there are a lot of people who are thinking that there are things more than what needs to happen before, say, the rapture or the start of the 70th week. But usually it's tied to the rapture, and usually this is in pre-trib circles that you hear this. I realize that there are a lot of people who are trying to say Psalm 83 is something that needs to happen before that, or it's relevant to our time. It's not. It's tied to God wrapping up judgment of his enemies at the second coming. Edom is proof enough of that, even if you don't look and explore the other people groups and their judgments. But Edom is clear from Obadiah that is related to what they do at the midpoint, tied to the remnant. Again, you're talking about hidden ones, and you're talking about the day of Jacob's distress, when they tried to thwart his flight. Like, all of that is all over it. When they tried to take counsel against the hidden ones, that's what that is. It's tied to events at the midpoint, is scattering his nations and parting his land. That's casting lots, Daniel 11:39, and then obviously specifically what they try to do to the people who are fleeing, who Michael supernaturally protects in the wilderness. But when Jesus returns at the second coming, he returns to Bozra. He's going to, according to Zechariah 12, save the tents of Judah first, and he's going to tread the winepress from Bozra, which means there's probably armies that are just waiting to be able to get to them. And Jesus saves the tents of Judah first, and he treads the winepress from Bozra all the way up to the Kidron Valley to sit and judge the heathen roundabout. Why? Because they scattered his people and parted his land. That's a midpoint event. So I wanted to, like I said, when I did the kind of preview video of this, there were two reasons why I wanted to talk about it. Specifically to address the Psalm 83 component, but then also to help people understand that the covenant of Daniel 9:27 is not a dividing of the land. It is not a two-state solution. It is not what a lot of people are trying to make it. And while there is a lot going on in the Middle East right now, there's a lot of speculation, there's a lot of things being tossed around, specifically like recognition of a Palestinian state and things like that. That would not be what the covenant is anyway. The dividing of the land is tied to something else entirely at the midpoint of the 70th week. Yes, it will happen. Yes, there will be judgment for it. But it has nothing to do with the start of Daniel's 70th week or what that covenant is. That covenant is a return to the Mosaic law, along with the reinstitution of the sacrificial system and the rebuilding of the temple. It is not a land for peace or a two-state solution or a Palestinian state or the Abraham Accords or what people are talking about. It's interesting those things are going on, but that's not what the actual covenant is. So hopefully this has clarified some stuff. Hopefully you guys have found this interesting, if no other thing. But there's a lot of ties in these Old Testament minor prophets that are really helpful to discerning other things that come up and trying to put everything in its buckets. Obviously, if you guys have questions, let me know. But hopefully this has been helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. So I will wish you a good day where you are, a good evening where I am. I'll see you guys later.